These Violent Delights, Chapter 38. One by one, the insects detached from Elisa Montagava. They writhed and screeched as the mother host bled out, gnashing their microscopic teeth at one another. When the heart that fueled them all stopped beating, they were too focused to go to their death throes. Detaching from the tissue they had clutched, unhinging their jaw from the nerve they had selected, in their last moments they started to emerge. Where their only goal had once been to bury deep, the insects now desperately tried to burrow out, thrashing and thrashing in a tangle of limp blonde hair, before at last passing into death and dropping onto the white fabric of the hospital linens. With a gasp, Elisa awoke. She bolted upright and heaved for fresh air, coughing and coughing until the pipe that had been feeding her flew out of her mouth. She had risen just enough to scatter out the dozen arthropod bodies left behind on the pillowcase, already shriveled in their death. She did not dare move any more than that. She inhaled sharply and held her breath in her lungs this time, her eyes almost crossing in her attempt to look upon the barrel of the gun pointed to her forehead. "It's okay, Elisa," someone wheezed from the corner of the room. Elisa flicked her eyes to the voice. It did more to heighten her panic than it did to ease it. She found Benedict, her cousin, with his hands up, 2 guns pointed upon him, and Marshal Sejo in a corner, similar predicament near the door. "Welcome back to the world, Elisa Montagava," Tyler Kai said. He pressed the hard muzzle to his gun into her skin. "Sorry it has to be that way." The city streets remained an uproarious parade of commotion as Roma and Juliet made their way through. Everywhere Juliet looked, she saw the corpses of those who had been in the monster's path of destruction. She saw political chaos, rioters still intent on making themselves heard even when their fellow workers were lying dead in the gutters. In her hurry, she had lost count of how many near collisions she made with a protester, how many times she had almost hit with their flailing torches or withering signs blowing in the wind. But when Roma and Juliet ran to the border of Nancy, it was quiet. "Did we take a wrong turn?" Juliet whispered. "No," Roma said. "This is right." The tall factories were slouching in a muted, mild manner. The roads were void of rickshaw runners, void of vendors, void of even the faintest sounds from children running amok. That was to be expected, but in the absence of the regular humdrum, they had expected pandemonium, not quiet. "Have the riots not started here yet?" "I suppose it is our benefit if they have not," Juliet said hesitantly. "Where is the hospital?" Roma pointed. They ran. Every hard step of Juliet's heel coming down threw shocks into her legs, until she was hurrying up the steps of the hospital, with her calves throbbing and her teeth chattering. The anxiety coursing through her limbs had no other place to go. "Hello?" Roma called, pushing the double doors open. There was nobody in the reception area. No nurses, no doctors. "Listen, Roma," Juliet whispered. They stilled, under the chipping paint of an archway leading into the thin corridor. A squeak of a shoe. A low murmur. An angry shout. "Get off me!" "That's Marshall," Roma breathed. He shot off in a sprint. "Marshall!" "Wait, Roma!" Juliet snapped. "Roma!" She raced after him, hands on her pistol, finger curled around the trigger, but by the time she arrived, weapon outstretched and aimed, it was too late to gain the upper hand. Roma had already skidded into the room and rocked right into an ambush, forced to place his hands over his head as 3 Scarlet leveled their guns at him. "Would you look at that?" Tyler clicked his tongue. Elisa whimpered. "At once, the big fish all come swimming in." "Tyler!" Juliet hissed. Tyler shook his head before she could say anything more. Every move coming from him was a slow moment of carefully contained fury. Except his arm, steady as ever, except he kept his weapon pointed at Elisa. "Tell me, Tang Jie, who are you aiming at right now?" Juliet did not know. She had raised her gun for the sake of raising it, for the sake of having something to do if events erred sideways. But she supposed it already had, and it had been erring for a long, long time. Slowly, Juliet lowered her weapon, her hands shaking. The Scarlets in the room looked upon her in disdain. She understood. Tyler had discovered the truth of her alliance with the White Flowers, and had come to enact his revenge. He had turned the Scarlets against her, had painted a picture of her betrayal. Their eyes flickered between her and Roma, and in that moment, with startling clarity, Juliet realized her mistake. It was her fault for believing, for hoping. A love like theirs was never going to survive in a city divided by hatred. This would be the death of them all. Unless Juliet could save them. Breathe. She was not merely the heiress who had come from the West, a caricature ripe for their rumors, ripe to be painted and easily swayed, easily manipulated. Her heartstrings open to pluck at a moment's notice. Smile. She was a monster in her own right. What do you think you're doing? Juliet asked. Her voice came out level, edging on dull. Redeeming your lack of judgment. You've betrayed us, Juliet. Pulled us back miles in this feud. Tyler shook his head. I'll make up for it. Don't worry not. His finger tightened on the trigger. Stop! Juliet snapped. You absolute idiot! You think I betrayed you? You think you're doing us a favor by killing all the Montagovs? It's a trick, Tyler. All you shall invite with their deaths is retribution upon our family. Tyler laughed harshly. Don't try fooling your way out of this. I tell the truth. But you have always been a liar. A sudden shot rang through the room then, tearing a startled cry from Juliet's throat. Only it was not from Tyler's gun. It came from the pistol that Marshall suddenly wrenched from the Scarlet nearest to him, turned against its owner. The Scarlet dropped to the floor. Marshall lunged forward, hoping to save Elisa, hoping for one frantic shot to move Tyler out of the way. Then Tyler whipped his pistol up and fired first. Marshall sank to the ground. His hand went to his ribs, where a blotch of red bloomed. Mars! Benedict roared. Don't you dare! A Scarlet hissed immediately. He jammed his gun hard into Benedict's temple. It stopped Benedict dead in his tracks, unable to move a single step toward Marshall, lest he be shot too. The Scarlets would find any reason to shoot. Juliet knew they would. You are all mad, Marshall managed from the floor. He winced. The blood started to pour through his fingers, making a mess that dripped and dripped onto the floor. You are all cursed. Montagovs and Kais alike. There's a plague on both your damn houses. Tyler raised his gun again. Stop, Juliet demanded. Stop! Another gunshot. This one from Roma. He had sidestepped one of the men, managed to fire once in the time it took them to get him under control again. His bullet merely skimmed Tyler's shoulder, sending Tyler back a step, hissing in pain. Stop! The room stilled. Guns upon guns upon guns. That was how it would always be. Did you hear that? Juliet hissed. She held up a finger near her ear, demanding the men in the room listen. The united roar of noise, the united stomping of feet and chanting, of slogans coming from afar and coming even closer. When they get here, Juliet seethed, they will kill us all. White Flowers or Scarlet Gang, it does not matter. They have machine guns and machetes, and what do we have? Money? She turned to her side. The Scarlet gangster that Marshall had shot was dead on the ground. The bullet was in his neck. His eyes were glazed, staring up at the ceiling. She had not even known his name. Marshall's torso, too, was dripping blood. Tyler would not let the White Flowers leave in time to save Marshall. Tyler was not so kind. He needed to register at least one sacrifice in order to be appeased. One sacrifice had to be made for the White Flowers to escape, for Elisa to live. Her throat tight, Juliet stuck her hand into her pocket. She wished there existed something up her sleeve that would defuse the situation, but there was nothing. There was only the blood feud. We must leave before it's too late. Have you no honor? Tyler hissed. Honor? Juliet echoed harshly. Her voice was terrible in the reverberant quiet of the hospital room. Who cares about honor when we will all be dead should we remain any longer? I will not be the first to leave this room, Juliet, Tyler said coldly. I wish not to be shot in the back. Then they leave first, Juliet proposed, squaring her shoulders. Lex talionis, Tyler. An eye for an eye. That's how this feud works. She pointed a finger to Marshall. She forced it not to shake. Let go of your deluded revenge plan. We only kill him for the Scarlet lost. The others go free. No! Roma and Benedict snapped in unison. Juliet's stomach was ice cold when she looked Roma straight in the eye. You are not exactly in the position to be bargaining right now. It's not going to work, Juliet, Roma said firmly. If Tyler wants a fair fight, let's have a fair fight. Do not lie to have us retreat. Did he not realize she was saving him? Did he not realize that an armed uprising was occurring outside, mobs upon mobs seeking to kill all whom they recognized as part of the elite? Did he not realize that cutting off ties between them was the only way they could all walk out alive? That if Tyler even faintly suspected Juliet of being Roma Montagov's lover, then Roma was already half lowered into his grave? He does realize, a little voice whispered. He stays for you. He will not walk away from you. Not a second time. He would rather die. Juliet supposed it was her turn to walk away. The lover and the liar and the lover. They switched those roles between themselves like it was a game. I tell the truth, Juliet said again. Each word was a blade that sliced through her tongue, cutting her twice as deep as the harm she put out into the world. Wake up. This entire dalliance between us has had an extraction of information. Juliet, don't say such. Myburgh Road, Juliet interrupted. Roma stopped. He simply stopped. He recognized the address. It was his mother's safe house. The one that no one knew about. The blood feud is the blood feud. Don't think much on it. Don't dwell. It's not your fault. Oh, but it was. It was. Lady Montagava had died 2 weeks after Juliet left Shanghai. 2 weeks after the attack on the Scarlet House that had killed all her servants. Because after the attack, Juliet had lost her temper at the 2 Scarlet men escorting her on the boat to New York. Her parents were too busy to even send her off. The Scarlets had thought, the task between them, one had snapped for her to shut up. That she was merely a child who knew nothing about the city, who wasn't needed there. Because that day Juliet had stomped her foot down in a fit of childish anger, and to prove herself, told the 2 Scarlet men everything she knew about the White Flowers in one long breath, including the safe house location of Lady Montagava. She had gotten the address on an off chance, one lazy afternoon, when she had gone into White Flower territory to surprise Roma, and overheard him talking to his father. The Scarlet men hadn't asked questions about how she knew such information. They had brushed her off. They thought they hadn't taken her seriously. She had felt sick to her stomach once she boarded the boat. But she told herself that Roma betrayed her first. That the Scarlet Gang could do what they pleased with the information she gave them, and it would serve him right. She never could have thought that they would hunt down his mother. I knew, Juliet said. I always knew. Your mother's death is my doing. From her bed, Elisa started to shake. She was looking at Juliet with wide, wide eyes. No, Roma could barely get the word out. You didn't. Outside, the sounds of the workers' protest rang in stark closeness. Metal struck the other side of the hospital walls in frenzy and hysteria. Roma was having trouble breathing. He simply could not see clearly, could only see blurs of colors, vague figments of shapes. The barest glitter of a person who opened her mouth and spat. I was raised in hatred, Roma. I can never be your lover. Only your killer. Juliet strode forward, directly in front of Marshall. She knelt down callously, pulled his hand away from his wound, inspecting him as if he were nothing more than a piece of trash tossed before her feet. An eye for an eye, Juliet said. She struck Marshall hard across the face. He went skittering, his body colliding with the hard, cold floor, both his arms widening around his head, a hand in front of his face as if to protect himself. Blood. So much blood beneath him. Juliet put her hands around her weapon. She made a twisting motion to her pistol, securing her grip. Then, a life for a life. Bang. No! Benedict roared. Marshall's head lolled back. He was motionless. Motionless. Roma couldn't breathe. Marshall, get up! Benedict spat. Get up! Juliet made a flippant, waving motion to the Scarlets holding Benedict's captive. Let him go, she said. Let him see for himself. And the Scarlets listened. They eased up on their guns just enough so that Benedict could move away, but not so much that they could not shoot, should he suddenly attack. Juliet had pulled herself up to the top again. She was slotted back above Tyler. and there she would remain, so long as she was terrible. Benedict walked to Marshall, appearing utterly devoid of anything. He put his hand on Marshall's throat and kept it there waiting. A terrible noise tore through from his cousin. Roma would hear that sound in his head forever. "Wake up!" Benedict demanded roughly. He shook Marshall's shoulders. Marshall was unresponsive. Only a corpse, limp as a marionette. "Wake up!" He would not wake up. Juliet did not react to the scene before her. She looked at the body and the mourner like they meant nothing to her, and Roma supposed they didn't. "Go," Juliet said to him. She aimed her gun at Elisa. "Go before we kill you all." Roma had no choice. He staggered to Elisa, held out his hand for her to take, and the white flowers retreated. Juliet watched them leave. She burned the image into her mind, burned in the relief that flooded through her veins and tasted like sweetness on her tongue. She forced herself to remember this moment. This was what monstrosity achieved. Perhaps Ball Dexter was onto something after all. Perhaps there was something to terror and lies. A cacophony of voices burst into the hospital. It echoed through the long corridors, calling for workers to fan out and sack the place, to enact as much destruction as possible. "I'll deal with him," Juliet said, nodding to the body she was kneeling over. "Go, Tyler. Take your men. There's a back door." For a long moment, it seemed that Tyler would not accede. Then, as a loud clang of metal against metal rang through the hospital, he nodded and waved for his men to follow him. Only Juliet remained, settling her hand on a cooling body. Only Juliet remained, living with the weight of her sins.